In this video, this is part 2 of dimensioning with AutoCAD. This video, we actually will dimension the base plate, and I'll show you how to do that. Over here, if I maximize this real quick, the same place, annotation tab, you have your dimensions. You have all different kinds of dimensions. So just to throw it out, right now we're set to AutoCAD inches decimals. The drawing we're trying to make is not in decimals, it's in fractions. So make sure to switch to AutoCAD inches fractions. There's another video on how to set that up. First video I did today. In this video, we're just going to go through the dimensioning process. There's multiple ways to detail a drawing as far as setting up your first dimension. You can actually just go ahead and pick linear. You can use the Smart tool. If you use the Smart tool, you actually pick a line, okay, and then it wants to dimension it somehow, some way. Now you'll notice when it's at an angle, remember I'd set it to a fraction of 1 over 256? Well, okay, that's the fractional value at the hypotenuse of that triangle. When you think about it, what it really is. And here it is at this dimension, 2 1/4. So whatever the lowest fractional value is, that's the fraction you'll see. That's why it didn't matter to me that I set my dimension style for fractions. When I go to modify it, I set the primary units to 1 over 256. Didn't matter, because it'll show me what the actual dimension is, the lowest value. See that? And you'll notice how I can control the motion of my dimension. The only reason of my text, the only reason I can do that with some degree of efficiency is because of the primary units, under fit, where I said place text manually. I want that control. Okay? That way I can control where I drop it. Now here's the biggest problem. Then I'll make a point of identifying this. This is what people in the industry find a little frustrating with the students or the new hires. They don't know how to control the product to make sure the dimensions come out great. The reason for that is twofold. One, they don't start dimensioning correctly. They just literally go and dimension. Meaning, they're like, all right, I've got this dimension, so I'm just going to, the computer's letting me do this, so I'll go ahead and drop this dimension in. Oh, I can drop this dimension in, so I just go ahead and drop it. See how random that is? It's pretty random. I'm just dropping them wherever they drop. The software doesn't do anything for you. Doesn't cover the etiquette of dimensioning. It only lets you control your what your arrows look like, things like that. But the etiquette part, that's a different class. That's our engineering graphics class. And those of you who've done that already, you know that there's an etiquette to how you dimension, or you will if you don't yet. First part of that etiquette is in your dimension style right here. The standards. Where do I drop my dimensions? Do you notice the software didn't drop them beautifully? Did they just let you drop it wherever? How do you know that the first dimension is 1/2 inch away from the part, which is this value right here? How do you know this first dimension is 1/2 inch away? You don't. You actually have to use the offset command, which I'm whoops, I got to click in here first. I'm going to type it in. Offset. This is a command you already know. 1/2 inch is the distance. I pick this dimension and go up. Uh-oh, what's it doing? It's supposed to offset 1/2 inch. Let me try that one more time. Offset 0.5 here to there. That's the 1/2 inch mark. That means you really need to drag this first dimension down there. That's how you know it's in the right position. And then this dimension can also be equally dragged down by its grips, so that lines up with that. Now those things are in the right spot. You have a little line back there, though, that you have to delete. Now, if I want to add a dimension above this, now I can go ahead and use something called linear. Not linear. Sorry. Over here under baseline. Baseline will take the last dimension you were in, and go ahead and dimension after that. So if you keep doing this, just for example, see that? Every single one of these dimensions is 3/8 of an inch away from the first dimension. So that works out great. It's just that first dimension that you have to locate correctly. None of the other ones, the rest will pop in correctly to your standards. But I have a bigger question. How big is this part? This particular part is what size? Let's look at it. It's 8.5 inches long by 5 inches tall. So what's missing is a border. Okay, so if we took a rectangle, if I went ahead to draw and drew a rectangle and just picked a point D for dimensions, and we picked what size is a piece of paper? 11 across by 8.5 tall, right? 8.5 by 11. This is basically a sheet of paper. Does this thing fit in this sheet of paper? The answer is yes, it does. That's good news. But do we turn drawings in without a border? No, we never do that. So we have to make a border. So if I went to print this, we've done this before on print. We're just going to plot a single page, and we go ahead and we pick, let's pick the printer we have in the room. We're going to say letter, we're going to do window, we're going to go from corner to corner, okay, and then we're going to center the plot as we always do. We're not going to fit to paper, we want this 1-to-1 scale, 1-to-1 scale, 1-to-1 scale. Now if I preview this, let's see what I get. It looks good, but my border's gone. I have no border. I have no title block, I got nothing. So I actually need to fix this. So this edging that I have represents literally an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Doesn't represent my border. Now those of you who are doing the engineering graphics class, we use a border. That border is 0.25 away from the edge. 0.25 away from the edge. That's the actual border. 0.25 inches away from the edge. So now I'm going to erase that outer perimeter. Now I have this. Now if I go to print, continue to plot single page, again pick the printer, again pick window. This time I'm going to pick this smaller window that's created. I'm going to center my plot. I'm not going to say fit to paper. I'm going to say 1-to-1. Now I do a preview. Hey, I got an edge. Beautiful. Now, the scale is 1-to-1. That means it's full size. 1-to-1. What's missing? All my information. Who am I? What's my name? Right? So, the way to do that is you have to create the rest of this border. When you use the rectangle command, it appears as one object. You're going to have to explode it. You click on the border, hit the X button on your keyboard, which is explode, and that's it. Now they're lines. So down here, you're going to offset 1/4 of an inch. Okay, that creates a space in here. Your text is going to be 1/8 of an inch tall in here. That's going to have your name on it. Okay, so when you go to text and you make a window, okay, the text here default is 0.2, so you're going to change that to 1/8 of an inch. Okay, that way you'll type text 1/8 of an inch tall, 0.125 tall, not 1/4 inch. Wow, come on you, 0.125. That's the height that I want my text to be. There we go. And you're going to type your name in caps, not lowercase, in caps. Now I happen to have my initial is A for Antigone. So if you have a first name A, put a period and a space, it's going to assume like A, B, C, D, E. It makes this extra gap. So what I have to do with my name, I have to put A and a space, and then put my last name in. And then go back and put a period in to fake it out. So if any of you have a first initial A, that's what you got to do. Sorry. It's just how the software works. When you're done, you close the text editor. So now you have text that is 1/8 of an inch tall that you need to drop into the space. But not just anywhere, not at the top, not at the bottom. You want to center it. If you want to get really picky on centering, you know your teacher gets a little picky, right? Well, if my text is 1/8 of an inch tall, and the space I want to sit it in is 1/4 of an inch tall, what kind of gap am I talking about if I really wanted to get picky? For fun, let's just try to draw that from here to here. Okay. Then I got a line from midpoint. I showed you guys how to do that on the fly. Whoops, undo, horizontal. There we go. By offset, what's half of 1/8 of an inch? A 16. So if I type in 1/16, I go up 1/16, I go down 1/16. Guess what that bottom piece is? That's another 16. But now guess what I have is a handle. So you want your text centered a 16th inside that space. A 16th from the bottom or a 16th from the top, I don't care which. I lined that up perfectly by actually using my offset. I didn't have to draw this extra line in. Because if I knew a 16th was the number, I would just offset down. And then my grip is what I would be using to drop my text, and that would be it. You want your name. What else do you want? Your name should be in there. The next thing you should want is, what is this thing? It's the base plate. Yep. So you always want to separate stuff. Okay, so now, because I'm lazy, I'm just going to copy over my name. Just drag it over. And now what I'm going to do is type in what this thing is. This is 4-52 base plate. If I can first learn how to spell plate. Now you see how it dropped down? Why did it do that? Because the box is too short. So I just lengthened the box. Done. Okay? What else would we like to know? Just got to copy that vertical line over. Scale. Good. That's a good one. So I'm going to copy again. I'm going to copy this over. And now I want to know my scale. So I'm going to use that, and I'm just going to type in scale 1:1, because we know what we're going to print it at, right? So there, threw in scale. So we've got your name, base plate, the name of the thing, the scale. Anything else we want to know? Maybe when we made the drawing? This time I'm going to copy both of these together so I don't have to keep copying twice. Now I'm going to change scale to date. 9/18/18. How about that? Okay? Now I have room. See, I've got all this room. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to move some things over. I'm going to move scale down here. I'm going to leave the date and drag that over a bit. Base plate, I'll leave it where it is. I can move my name a little bit. Maybe center base plate a little bit in that big box. Got it? Now you'll notice I intentionally left the spot because there's one thing I do want you to do, because I will ask this of you. I'm going to change, correct your work. So you're going to say revision. So whenever we correct your work, you're going to have your original, and then you're going to have a revision when I correct it, and that revision will be called revision A. You just put red, you just put the letter A after it. Okay? Initially, there won't be any revision. So that is how you create a title block inside your border. This was the border, the big shape all the way around it. Okay? And your title block is all the stuff I dropped in the bottom. Okay? Now, I have this situated well. I would like to center it as best as I can. So I'm going to do one of those X marks the spot thing. And I'm going to try to move this object, my drawing. I want it to be centered did the move command there, and I'm going to center this inside my drawing area. Alright? There you got it. So now everything should print out correctly. Okay, but the dimensions I dropped in are not the dimensions the customer asked for. So the way we dimension, and plus on top of that they want dimensions going in sideways. So we're going to have to change our dimension style to reflect that. So here we have our drawing. If you don't like the fact that the UCS icon is in the way there, you can move the whole thing over from here, if you want to out there. That way it's clear. See that? So there, I just went ahead and moved it. You can move it as far as you want if you want. There. Now you have a clear drawing to work with. Remember, the first thing you want to do is offset what? 3/8, not a 3/8, half an inch. So when you drop your first dimension, it's half an inch away from the part. Half an inch away from the furthest part of the part. Now notice what I'm doing. I'm doing it all around. Why? Because the first dimension that I drop everywhere is going to be half an inch away from the part. Here we see some dimensions inside the part, so we'll leave those in the part. But the other thing we notice is this is a center line. So how do I do that? We had this conversation in the last class for line types. Remember where line types are? Does anyone remember? If not, a quick way to get to your line type is type in LT for line type. Okay? You don't have to remember where the icons are. So here are the line types. We're going to click on load. AutoCAD.lin is the file we're using. You click inside here and you find C for center. In the last example we used center 2, I think. But you can use either center or center 2 on this one. I'll pick center. Hit OK and hit OK. Your next step would be to pick the lines, go to their properties, and change it to center line. Okay? Now something else you want to do is you want to be able to distinguish on thickness between your object lines and your center lines. Like here, you see how thick, you look at this image, see how thick the object line is and how thin the dimension line is. You want to do that too. That's done with line weights, which is this guy. So the way I do it, first thing you have to do is turn your line weights on. Line weight settings. Display line weights. That's first. Second, pick one line, and make it thicker. Not ridiculously thick, but thicker. Thicker, I know it's subjective. Each company will have its own standard. We're just going to say 0.3 millimeters just for fun. Okay? When you change one, now you use match properties. You pick this one, and then you click on all the other object lines, only the object lines. You can make crossing windows. Just make sure you're only picking the object lines. Got it? The other line you'd like to be equally thick is your border. Your border. Not your dimensions, not your words, nothing like that. Just those lines that belong to the border. Okay? And the title block, but not the text itself. So the line weight thickness we're going to use for the border and for our object lines for this class is 0.3 millimeters. Your company can do whatever it wants. I'm just showing what we're doing just so that we can show something. Okay? Now, when you drop in your dimensions, I gotta maximize this, I can't work like this. Make sure your dimensions, line weights by layer, and your line type is by layer. Now when you drop in your dimensions, now I have to minimize this again to find out what it is that the customer wants. The first dimension down here is 2 1/4. So when you go to annotate and dimension, I'm going to pick linear because I have more control than if I pick like the power dimension, whatever you want to call that. I pick from there to there, and watch. I actually position my mouse there so then I could track my dimension inside. Yep, let's do that one more time. Track my dimension inside, and that is your first dimension. Your next dimension, now I can delete this line, that reference. Your next dimension is going to be using I can't see them all. Hold on, I have to maximize this. The next big dimension they want is I have to go to annotate, and I'm going to pick baseline. So it automatically selected that. And then I pick my outermost dimension and I hit enter. So there's your second dimension, based on what the customer is looking for. Based on what the customer is looking for. 2 1/4 and 8 1/2. So now those two dimensions are on the drawing. Now, this dimension here, the 2 1/2 going this way, and I go to annotate, and drop that dimension in from here to here. See that? It's pointing the wrong direction, so I have to go change my dimension style, and I'm going to modify this particular dimension style. When I go to text, I have to pick align with dimension line. When you pick align with dimension line, you hit OK and close, your dimension rotates and now is aligned with the dimension line. You have to make that change. So there's that dimension. And then you literally surgically are going across. So now my next dimension, linear, from here to this position, right there, that's my 4 1/4. I can go and just pick, instead of baseline, continue, so it just adds to that one. And it wants me to dimension that, because that's how they dimension it. Then I'm going to delete that. Whoops, going to delete that dimension. So now I have 4 1/4, 1 1/2, 2 1/2, 2 1/4 down here, 8 1/2. I have this 1/2 inch dimension out here, and that's from here to here, out to here. You do need to delete that little inner line. Okay? This dimension line, that center line, shorten it up a bit so it's not too close. It's my advice there. Now you have these dimensions inside. There we go. Again, we actually have to do an offset. Half an inch out. There we got another 1/2 inch out for this inner one. 1/2 inch up for that one. That one really didn't matter, I just threw it in there. So that way when I throw in this dimension, it'll drop in correctly. Gotta zoom in pretty close to pick that line though. There's the 2. The 1 inch mark. From here to here. There's 1 inch. Looks like they also did 1 inch over here. Okay, so there's that one and that one. Now here's an interesting one. When you drop this one in, you can line this up, that's not a problem. Just pause for a minute. Oh, come on, you. If it doesn't want to line up right away, you can drop it and then reline it later. This 3 is not supposed to be just the number 3. Just like this dimension here really isn't just, oh no, that one is 3/4, that's fine. But this one, 3, right here, is not just 3. So you have to actually click on this, right mouse button, go to its properties. Now the question is, you look at the properties of the dimension and you scroll down. You're going to see everything about this dimension. There's the measurement, see? And then there's text override. This is an example of where you actually override the text. And you type in 3 squared. Now I did put the period at the end of SQ. Sorry, I'm a little stickler for numeric representation. But that's what you have to do there. When you hit enter, that's what you get. So if anybody is wondering how to make it say 3 squared, that's how you do it. This, I think, has almost all the dimensions in it except the angle, which is over here. So that last dimension, instead of linear, I pick angular. I pick this, and then I drag it out here. Now here's a funny example. You'll notice how everything is aligned, but for some odd reason, this one is 30 across. Now this drawing was maybe done by hand, so they had all that control. But when you have aligned, it does everything aligned. So you actually have to override this thing. You have to override this dimension style in order to get it to go horizontal. I'm not going to do that with you. I'm going to let you say leave it as is. Okay? I'm not going to have you adjust that. And that's it. That literally finishes this drawing. What's cool is when we go to print for this, and we go to any printer, including what I've taught you before, which is Microsoft Print to PDF, because that's what I really want you to send me as a PDF. When you do that, this will be the first time that you're being extremely picky. Well, you should have been in the past too. You're going to pick window. You're going to go from corner to corner. Okay? Center the plot. Make sure that you're going to print 1-to-1. Plot style table. Not AutoCAD if you want to pick anything, but it really doesn't matter. Monochrome is what I usually select if I print in multiple colors. Monochrome means black and white. See where it says plot object line weights? That's defaulted on. Make sure it stays on. When you say preview, you're actually going to see this thing. And if you zoom in close, you should see different thicknesses. I don't see it. Ah, look at that. There is a small. You see that variance right there? So there is something going on. The dimensions I may have accidentally, so I'm going to cancel right now. The dimensions may be at the wrong line weight. So what I want to do is make sure that my dimensions are at a thin line weight. So I'm picking them all. And I have to make sure that my line weight, which is under home, properties, I need to make sure my line weights for these are actually really, really thin, like 0.05 thin, okay? 0.05 thin. That's important. So I click on one afterwards and make sure, yeah, 0.05 thin. Now if I go to print, continue to plot, rinse and repeat, Microsoft, print to PDF, letter, window, corner to corner, center the plot, not fit, 1-to-1 is the scale, monochrome, object line weights. Now if I do preview, I should see a significant, yes, difference. See that? See how the line weights are significantly different? That's what you want. And when you send it to me, I'll see it. I don't have to zoom in that close. If I go ahead and hit print for this, and then I call the sample, in my case it's just a sample drawing. When I look at the plot, hopefully, I don't know where that plotted. You ever had that happen to you? Yeah, it happens to me all the time. There we go. There we go. This should, if I zoom in very, very closely, I should see, oh, it looks like I missed a dimension. You notice how some of them are thicker? The only way I guess I might really see is if I print it. Some of these are adjusted, some of them are not. So I may have missed a few dimensions, I'm not sure. But you do want to see a difference between your dimension lines and your object lines. You definitely want to see a difference, a distinct difference. And there you do see it, right here especially. Let me zoom in. There, you see it. See that distinct difference? That's what you want. Which means maybe 0.3 millimeters thick isn't thick enough. Maybe I want to make it 0.6. Got it? I leave that up to you. But you want to see that variance in the difference of the dimension. Okay? From the object. Your object line needs to essentially pop. Your model. I can tell that it doesn't pop. You notice how it doesn't seem dramatic enough? So if I go back to AutoCAD, it looks dramatic here, but it's not dramatic enough. Let me pick one of these lines and change. Instead of 0.3, I'm going to make it 0.6. I'm doubling the thickness. Looks really thick on here. And I'm only picking, I only want to pick the object lines. Now that I have dimension lines in here, I've got to be a little more careful what I select. Because I don't want to accidentally select a dimension line and make it unusually thick. So I got to be a little careful how I select my objects. So if I pick only my object lines, which I did, now if I go to print, continue to plot, I've already printed once, so I can say previous plot, and it'll actually pick everything I did before. Let me preview this. This looks much more significant. See that difference? Now, what do you notice? Do you think the dimension, the hidden line's not thin enough, right? The hidden line should be thinner. So let's go back. I'm going to do a match properties of my object, of my dimension to now my hidden lines. They did change, but they turned into solid lines. So I need to change that back to center line. Now I think it'll look much better. Again, print. Continue to plot. Previous plot. Preview. That is significant. That looks good. Doesn't pop on the screen until I zoom in a little bit. You see how it pops now? How the object lines are distinctly brighter, thicker? That's what you want. That's the effect you're looking for. When I zoom far away, it's impossible to see, but when I zoom in close, boom. When it's printed, it's much more visible. It's not very visible on a screen. But if I go and actually go ahead and print this, now I'm going to call it thing. Go over here and open up the thing. Now do you see it? See how that is? If I go ahead and do a little compare and contrast out here, let me minimize this. If I can I? No, I cannot. It keeps toggling. So it looks like I gotta open up, I don't think I can do it next to a comparison next to each other. Unless I open up another window, and I don't want to. See that? Ooh, did I miss a line, guys? You guys notice something I missed? Right there. See where my little hand is? Oh, I didn't miss that. I guess that's just a video card issue. See that? I zoomed. Oh, no, I did. That's wrong. See? There's something there. There's some variance there. Just like there's something going on right here. But at least now you can tell. There's a little difference. So if I went ahead and actually printed this on the printer, when you do that, you must print actual size. Never print shrink, oversize, or fit. Always print actual size. Otherwise, it won't come out 1:1 scale. Okay? So when that comes out of the printer, go ahead and pull it, and you guys can take a ruler to it. And that ends this lecture. Good luck.